Hey everyone, it's Tuesday. I'm gonna fix you here. There you go. It's Tuesday and I'm sitting in the mall getting ready to go get my son, spend some time reading and talking to God, speaking to some fellow brothers of mine in ministry, and it's time to share the story. Let me tell you what I mean by the story. So the idea of this is I want to encourage you and me to make a commitment to be in God's Word daily and study through it. And this idea, there's going to be times when you're studying, at least for me, that some stories keep speaking to you, keep talking to your heart. And this is one of those stories. So we talked yesterday about the storm, and I gave you the reference in James. James says, "Consider it pure joy, brothers and sisters, when you go through trials of many kind." And that's a great verse, but it is a hard reality. And even in this story, we might have glossed over the reality or the struggle of what it is to be in a storm. And I wanted to talk into this storm. This is one of my favorite stories. I was teaching this story a couple years ago, maybe a year now or so, at the Salina Church of Christ, where I used to be a minister, pastor, terminology, a minister or evangelist is the terminology they use there. And as I was teaching this class, I came to this understanding. To me, at least, it was profound, and it actually ended the class for me. God really guided it, and it wasn't the emphasis that I was going for, because I was leading the class in a different direction. I truly believe this was God guiding through the living Word, and He showed it to me. So I'm going to read you the account in Matthew. And then I'm going to show you the same account with the terminology clarified, or the statement of what He said. So here in Matthew, there's the calming of the storm, and let's look what it says. It says chapter 8, verse 23. We've already looked at it, but I want to see it again. Then He got into the boat, and His disciples followed Him. Suddenly, a furious storm came up on the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke Him up, saying, "Lord, save us, we're going to drown." He replied, "You've little faith. Why are you so afraid?" Then He got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey Him." Now, I'm going to read to you the account out of Mark. It's Mark chapter 4, and you can read it here. Let's go at verse 35 of Mark chapter 4. It says, "That day when evening came, He said to His disciples, 'Let us go to the other side.' Leaving the crowd behind, they took Him alone, just as He was in the boat. There were also other boats with them. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion." I guess it was the first waterbed ever invented. The disciples woke Him up and saying, "Teacher, don't you care that we drown?" He got up, rebuked the winds, and said to the waves. And there's this next few words that I want you to hear. "Quiet, be still." Then the winds died down, and it was completely calm. Now, I want you to hear about these words, quiet and be still. Now, when I was teaching this, I wanted to go on and move on to the story and speak next into the demon-possessed man and the crazy, hairy, naked man. And we probably won't look at that. Well, we'll read it maybe today, but for time and understanding. But I want you to see the power of what it says to quiet, be still. Guys, storms are going to come. My family and I, we're dealing with a storm and trial or waves in our life, and it's a challenge and it's a difficulty. But God is in control. I know I've hinted to this idea, and I might share it on this, maybe. I don't know if there's even a benefit to do it. Because it's not the storm that is important here. The thing that's important is the message of Christ. Quiet. Be still. Why is that so important? Well, one, yes, he was speaking to the winds and the waves, but I challenge to say, was it just the winds and the waves he was speaking to? Or was he speaking to the ones in the boat? Don't you get it? Jesus is saying that he's in control. And I also understand and hear the fear. There's a beautiful story about Elijah and the prophet and the 40 prophets, 40 I believe prophets of Baal. And it's a wonderful story. I was talking with a friend of mine today, a minister, and he encouraged me with this story because it was such an amazing message that God, if there are moments in his life and in your life and our life where he will speak out to the storm. But I think it's not that God's against speaking out to the storm, but more or less it's the idea that he's always speaking in the quiet and stillness of our life. The story goes on later in Elijah where he's told to go and listen, and storms come and waves come and all these things come, and it wasn't till the quiet, still whisper was heard. You see, you focus on the storm and all you hear are the waves. But if you can be quiet and still, you can hear the words of God. Because look what happens next in our story in chapter 8. When he arrived after quiet, be still, when his disciples were ready to listen, when his disciples began to say, wait, there's something different here. When he arrived at the other side of the region of Gennesaret, 2 demon-possessed men came from the tombs to meet him. They were so violent that no one could pass that way. That storm was so powerful that no one could pass on the storm. Do you see it? The storm was out in the sea and the storm was on the land, because it's not about the storm. It's about the one who can quiet and still the storm. Verse 29. What do you want with us, Son of God? They shouted. Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time? Some distance from them was a large herd of pigs were feeding. The demons begged Jesus, if you drive us out, send us into those pigs. He said to them, go. So they came out and went into the pigs, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank and into the lake and died in the water. Those tending the pigs ran off. The storm was spreading. The storm wherein these 2 men, the storm is now spread back into the water. The storm is now affecting their life. Storms destroy. Verse 33, those tending the pigs ran off, went into the town and reported all this, and concluding what had happened to the demon-possessed men. Then the whole town went out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they pleaded with him to leave the region. Again, if read in context to this story out of Matthew, or out of Mark, I want you to see the quiet and stillness of Jesus. The quiet and stillness of Jesus, that he can say those powerful 2-3 words out of Mark chapter 4, verse 39, quiet, be still. And the powerful, non-attacking response. He tells the demons, fine, leave, go, do it. The power of his words to those 2 men. We're going to emphasize on one man here in Mark. He says in verse 8 of chapter 5, Come out of this man, you impure spirit. He has the ability to command the storm. And the beauty of what happens is when they find him, when they find him and they see him, you can go down and look at this at verse 15. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Some of us in this world, and there are moments in my life I've lived like that. We don't find peace, and maybe even why I sit in the mall, because the quiet and still moments are scary. But God is in those moments. To sit in your right mind and say, God, I need to hear you. Interestingly, he tells the demons, sure, do what you want. And in fact, in Matthew, it's the people tell Jesus, want him to leave. And Jesus says, fine, I'll leave. He leaves them. But to his follower, he says, I am the controller of the storm, but that doesn't mean I want you to stop rowing. Let me explain what I mean. Verse 18 of chapter 5, then Jesus, getting into the boat, getting ready to leave because they had asked him to leave, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him, and Jesus did not let him, but said, go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he had mercy on you. See, when you learn to be quiet and still, and then you have this testimony. For some of us, we're still in the storm, and our testimony is, God, I haven't drowned yet. But when you get to the other side of the storm, God didn't get you through that storm so you wouldn't have storms. The storm in this man's life was just beginning. It was a completely different storm. It was a storm that said, you have a message to share. Now he had confidence that God would be with him. Peter would now have confidence that later on we'll see he's willing to step out on the boat. John would now have confidence to say, I don't need to be a son of thunder anymore. I don't have to try to control the situation, but I can let God control it. Thomas is building up his trust. And then for you, those storms are going to come. And be willing to listen to the powerful words of God. Quiet. Be still. That is way longer than 10 minutes. But I had to share that when looking at the man there in Matthew 8, is it was connected, I truly believe, to the story before this. The disciples had learned that God was in control, and I want you to know that as well. So, listen to the quiet, still voice. Know that God will see you through, and we'll see you tomorrow. Keep getting into his word. This is not out of obligation, but out of opportunity. This is not out where you need to keep God happy with you. This is purely out of the free choice to be able to say, God, I want to hear your words. I hope you have a blessed day. We'll see you tomorrow. I'll try to keep it down to 10 minutes in the future again. Bye.